Welcome to the channel and welcome to my review of Codex Chaos Daemons for 2018 Warhammer 40k 8th edition. It's a good book. I'm quite impressed by this book. I'm going to launch straight into it and point out some of the differences between this book and Index Chaos, which you previously used if you were a Chaos Daemons player. This review will make more sense to you if you know Chaos Daemons, but I'm going to dive into it and try and highlight all the most pertinent changes and additions that we find in this book. So as most of you will be aware, Demons are separated into 4 factions, Tzeentch, Nergal, Slaanesh and Khorne, dependent on their Chaos gods. So in here, the Codex is color-coded. It starts off with HQ, then goes to troops, then goes to elites, but each of the data sheets is color-coded so you know which one relates to which particular Chaos god. There are some grey data sheets as well for things like Soul Grinders or Warp or Spawn, Chaos Spawn. And when you pick the grey ones, then you give them a faction keyword to show that they belong to Khorne or Tzeentch or this, that and the other. It talks about it in the armies of the Immaterium. It talks about it right at the very start. So everything's got to belong to a certain allegiance. And if you pick a Soul Grinder, then you have to give it an allegiance. And depending on the allegiance, you get different core rules for that allegiance. So Khorne has unstoppable ferocity, so +1 strength and attacks when they charge or performs heroic intervention. Nergal, disgustingly resilient, a 5-up, and they don't take wounds. Quicksilver swiftness for those of Slaanesh. They fight first in the fight phase. And ephemeral form, add 1 to invulnerable saves, made for this unit for Tzeentch. Now, everyone that has their particular allegiance to Khorne or to Nergal gets these keywords. So if you're Nergal, all the things in here have disgustingly resilient. If you're Khorne, everything in here has unstoppable ferocity. If you're Tzeentch, everything in here has ephemeral form +1 to saving throws, except for Horrors. They don't have the core rule ephemeral form. So I'll quickly jump to Horace because they've taken a couple of changes. Instead of ephemeral form core rule, they have ephemeral demons core rule. So pink Horace have an invulnerable save of a 4-up, blue Horace have an invulnerable save of a 5-up, and brimstone Horace, pairs of brimstone Horace, have invulnerable saves of 6-ups. So ephemeral demons overrules the ephemeral form rule for Horrors. A couple of other changes to Horrors as well. Demonic Icon's still the same split, Instrument of Chaos still the same, but Magic Made Manifest. That's when they can do smite, basically. When they know 1 psychic power, they still roll 1 dice, so they can never perils. They can never get double 1s or double 6s. However, in addition, if the unit manifests the smite psychic power while it contains less than 10 pink Horrors, it only inflicts 1 mortal wound rather than D3. So that's a nerfing of the rules there for people who used to bring lots and lots of bringstones and they were doing D3 mortal wounds, D3 mortal wounds. Basically, if you want to do D3 mortal wounds with Horrors now, you need at least 10 pink Horror models. In the unit, blues and brimstones will only ever do 1 mortal wound. Right, back to the beginning. Or rather, let's flip to the end and talk about some of the general rules. Right, if you bring a battle-forged army, you get the Demonic Legions rule. So if all troops, units and Chaos Demons detachment gains this ability, if it's battle forged and it's essentially objective secured. You also get demonic loci, which if your army is battle forged, all characters in Chaos Demons detachments gain a demonic locus so long as every unit in that detachment owes its allegiance to the same Chaos god. So you could bring a detachment which solely consists of Nergal, and a detachment that solely consists of Tzeentch, and a detachment that solely consists of Khorne, in the same battle forged army. You don't have to go all Khorne or all Nergal. You can mix and match, but so long as everyone in that specific detachment is all Nergal or all Khorne, then your characters will get their locus. And demonic loci have different rules. This is what they are. So Khorne, you can reroll charge rolls for Khorne demon units that are within 6 inches of a friendly model with the Locus of Rage. So your Khorne detachment is all Khorne. Your characters in that detachment gets this loci, and then all the Khorne units within 6 inches of them reroll charge. And remember, when you charge with Khorne as well, it's +1 strength, +1 attack. Tzeentch, Locus of Trickery. So roll 2 dice at the start of each fight phase and discard the highest result. Until the end of that phase, each time your opponent targets a Tzeentch demon unit within 6 inches of a friendly model with a Locus and makes a hit roll that after re-rolls but before modifiers matches your remaining dice result, that result fails. So this is in the fight phase. You're rolling to attack. Say I'm attacking a Tzeentch unit. Hit rolls are 1 always miss, right? But say the dice roll that they roll 2d6, they discard the highest, and say the second dice roll is a 2 or a 3 or a 4. Whatever that number is, if I roll that number when I'm attacking that Tzeentch unit, I will miss that Tzeentch unit. So it increases the likelihood that the Tzeentch units are not going to get hurt back in close combat. Locus of Trickery. I like it, very Tzeentchy. Nergal. Each time you make a wound roll of a 6-up for a Nergal demon unit within 6 inches of a friendly model with this Locus of Virulence, that attack inflicts additional 1 damage. This is probably not the best of the locais. Essentially, in Nergal demons, instead of putting down Plague Bearers, for example, if they're rolling 6s to wound, they'll be doing 2 damage rather than 1 damage. The interesting thing about these locuses, I should point out as well, it says a Nergal demon or a Tzeentch demon or a Khorne demon. Well, Mortarion has the Nergal keyword and the demon keyword. So if he's within 6 inches of a demon character that has this locus, because you've brought a Nergal detachment, does Mortarion have +1 damage? And Magnus the Red has the Tzeentch and demon keywords. So you bring in Magnus the Red, you bring in some Chaos Space Marines along. You've also got a Eternal Horde, a Demonic Legion of Tzeentch, and that detachment is solely battle forged. Every unit within 6 inches of a character from that battle forged unit has the loci, demonic loci. So does that mean Magnus the Red, if he's within 6 inches of a character, will also benefit from that being more tricky to hit? Rules as written, that's a yes, essentially. We're going to need a FAQ on it, though. Slaanesh, Locus of Swiftness. All Slaanesh demons within 6 inches of a friendly model with a Locus of Swiftness can charge and declare a charge even if they advanced in their movement phase. That's nice. So these loci are the hot new things that you can have, that you've got for free for your demons, as well as the usual stuff such as Disgustingly Resilient and the usual stuff. And Summoning is in here and untouched, and Demonic, the Demonic keyword is still a 5-up. Invulnerable Save. Those are this extra rules that you get for your Eternal Horde. There's 2 pages of stratagems, just 2. A couple of them are generic, but all of them, but most of them are specific to a specific Nergal demon, to Nergal or Tzeentch or Slaanesh, to a specific allegiance. There's obviously 24 Warlord traits, 6 for every single allegiance. There's 2 pages of Hell Forged artifacts, relics, and there's a bunch of psychic powers in here as well, because there's psychic powers for every allegiance except for Khorne. Let's go through the generic ones. Denizens of the Warp allows you to put demons in reserve. You can do this anyway, because you can summon them in, right? But instead you could spend command points to put things in the Warp with high power ratings that might be difficult to summon, and they can deep strike in on the battlefield. So rather than trying to summon them in, you can use a stratagem to bring them in instead. The second one, Demonic Incursion for 2 command points, I really like, because it only affects you if you play against Grey Knights. So we know Grey Knights are tooled to beat demons, right? And if you're a demon player and you go up against Grey Knights, you're probably finding it a bit tough to beat them, because they re-roll a wound all their attacks when they fight demons. Not only that, their smite, their nerf smite, which only does 1 mortal wound to all other armies, does D3 mortal wounds to you. So it's a bit tough if you're a demon player going up against Grey Knights, because they're specifically tooled to hurt you. But this is a 2 command point stratagem that specifically helps to help you only when you fight Grey Knights. So it says that
Use this stratagem when one of your demon units is destroyed by a Grey Knight's unit, any Grey Knight's unit. The destroyed unit is returned to your army at full strength, is set up on the battlefield at the end of your next movement phase, anywhere on the battlefield that's more than 9 inches away from enemy models, and this does not cost you any reinforcement points in a matched play game. That one's a bit, wow. I like it. Free units if you play Grey Knights, because, yeah, Grey Knights can hurt you. 2 command points, Soul Sacrifice. Use this stratagem before a Chaos character from your army attempts to summon a unit of demons to the battlefield using a demonic ritual. That character suffers D3 mortal wounds, but you can roll 4 dice rather than 3 for summoning. In addition, reroll hit rolls of 1 for the summoned unit while it's within 6 inches of the character that performed the demonic ritual. That costs 2 command points. And rewards of chaos, 1 to 3 command points. That allows you to pick extra relics. We've seen that in the other codexes. Instead of just taking 1 free relic, you can spend command points to get more than 1 free relic. Demonic Pact. Use this stratagem after a chaos character from your army summons a unit of demons to the battlefield. That character can immediately attempt to summon a second unit of demons for 1 command point. Demonic Possession, 1 command point. Use the stratagem when an enemy Psyker suffers perils of the warp. That unit suffers 2 D3 mortal wounds instead of D3 mortal wounds. Doesn't sound great, but it hasn't got a range. It's just 1 command point. So if at some point during the game an enemy Psyker suffers perils instead of D3, you could do 2 D3 and potentially kill them. Warp Surge, 2 command points. Use this stratagem at the start of any phase. Select a unit of demons. Until the end of the phase, you cannot re-roll saving throws for this unit, but its invulnerable save is improved by 1 to a maximum of 3+. That's good. Warp Surge, 2 command points. So you do that on your Tzeentch stuff, for example, and their 4-up goes to a 3-up all of a sudden. But yeah, +1 invulnerable save. Those are the generic stratagems. The rest are allegiance specific. I don't consider anything there to be particularly uber, unless you play against Grey Knights. That Warp Surge one is quite nice as well, but it does cost 2 command points. While we're talking about wide stuff and generic stuff, let's just mention that there is no Warp Storm table in this book. The Warp Storm table has gone, which I think is a good thing, because that thing was just a pain in the butt, right? Right, Khorne-specific stratagems. Banner of Blood. Use this stratagem before the battle. Choose one of your Khorne models with a demonic icon. That icon is upgraded to a Banner of Blood. In addition to its normal ability, the power of the banner can be used once per battle. Just before the bearer's unit declares a charge. When used, the bearer's unit can charge 3d6 instead of 2d6. 1 command point. 2 command points, Locus of Wrath. Use this stratagem at the start of any fight phase. Select a Khorne demon character. Until the end of the phase, you can reroll any failed hit rolls for friendly Khorne demon units within 6 inches of this model. That one's very nice. Reroll any failed hit rolls for Khorne demon units within 6 inches. Nice bubble. 3 command points, Frenetic Bloodlust. Use this stratagem at the end of any fight phase. Select one of your Khorne demon units. That unit can immediately fight again. That's Khorne done. Let's go on to Nergal. 2 command points, Revolting Regeneration. Use this stratagem at the end of your movement phase. Select one of your Nergal demon units. One model in the unit regains D3 lost wounds. If there are no wounded models in the unit, and that unit has suffered any casualties, a single slain model from the unit is returned to play with 1 wound remaining. Sounds good, but 2 command points to put D3 wounds back on yeah, it's a tough one. I don't think that'll get used very much. Neither will the Plague Banner for 1 command point. Basically, once per battle, you can make all Plague Swords, the damage characteristics of all Plague Swords in a unit. You can increase the damage by 1. So a unit of Plague Bearers, instead of damage 1, suddenly becomes damage 2. If you bring lots of Plague Bearers, you might use that if you're fighting Primaris Space Marines, but it is once per battle. 2 command points, Locus of Fecundity. Use this stratagem at the start of any phase. Select a Nergal demon character. And until the end of the phase, you can re-roll disgustingly resilient rolls of 1 made for friendly Nergal demon units within 6 inches of this model. So this is the one that will get used. Because if you bubble up around a particular character, re-rolling all your disgustingly resilient rolls of 1 doesn't seem that beef. But that is a 12-inch bubble there. And after rolling your invulnerable save, and then disgustingly resilient, and then re-rolling the ones, 2 command points, pricey, but it will be used. Tzeentch, Blasted Standard or Blasted Standard. Choose one of your Tzeentch models with a demonic icon. It's upgraded to a Blasted Standard. In addition to its normal ability, the power of the banner can be used once per battle at the beginning of any psychic phase. When used, roll 9 dice. For each roll of a 6, the closest visible enemy unit within 9 inches suffers a mortal wound. Once per battle, 9 dice. Got to get a 6. How many 6s can you get when you roll 9 times? It's only 1 command point though, but it has got a 9-inch range. 1 command point, Magical Boon. Use this stratagem at the end of your psychic phase. Select a Tzeentch Demon Psyker from your army, and it can immediately attempt to manifest 1 additional psychic power this turn. That's quite nice. I like it. So you're smiting away, and then you want to pull something else out of the bag for a command point, maybe. Locus of Conjuration, 2 command points. You select a Tzeentch demon character at the start of your psychic phase, and until the end of the phase you can reroll psychic tests for all Tzeentch demon units within 6 inches of that model. Again, I'm assuming that this Locus of Conjuration, because it affects all Tzeentch demon units within 6 inches of that model, would affect Magnus the Red or any unit with the Tzeentch demon keyword, not just Tzeentch demons in this book. Okay, Slaanesh, Locus of Grace. Select a Slaanesh demon character from your army until the end of the battle. Each time you make a wound roll of 6+ for a friendly Slaanesh demon unit within 6 inches of that character, that model may make an additional attack against the same target using the same weapon. 1 command point, Aura of Acquiescence. Use this stratagem at the start of the fight phase. Select a Slaanesh demon unit from your army. Enemy units within 3 inches of that reduce their attack's characteristics by 1 to a minimum of 1. That could come into effect. It's only a 3-inch bubble, but reducing the attack's characteristics, that's interesting. And 1 command point, Rapturous Sword. You'll notice all the Slaanesh things here are only 1 command point at a time. Rapturous Standard, sorry. Again, it's another banner, and it can be used once per battle just before the bearer's unit fights. And when used, you can reroll all failed hit rolls for the bearer's unit until the end of the phase. And that's it for the stratagems. The standout one for me is the Banner of Blood, which allows you to charge 3d6 instead of 2d6 if you're Khorne. Remember, if you've got the Locus of Rage going off, if you're within 6 inches of a character, you'll be re-rolling those charge dice. But you can only use it once per battle. All of these banner ones in here, once per battle. So that's a good one. The rest of them appear quite situational, and you'll have to figure out how they stack with what as you play the game, where all the different combinations are there. Right, Warlord Traits, there's a lot of them. Khorne. I'm not going to go through every single one of them because there's 24 Warlord Traits on this pages, but Khorne, add 1 to your Warlord's attacks characteristics if there are more enemy models within 8 inches of them than there are friendly models. Oblivious to Pain on a 6-up, doesn't lose a wound. Immense Power, add 1 to your strength characteristic. Or reroll hit rolls of 1 for friendly Khorne demon units that charge this turn and are within 8 inches of your Warlord when they fight. Remember, that would also affect your Warlord as well because he's in range of himself. So if you're putting that on a Bloodthirster or something nasty that hits on 2s anyway, he'll be hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Those are probably the standout ones for Khorne. Tzeentch. You can either add 1 to the result of the first psychic test made for your Warlord in each psychic phase, which is nice, getting a smite off on a 4 or something, add 1 to your psychic test on the first time you do it. I like it. In corporeal form, reduce the damage by 1 against your Warlord, so if something does damage 3, it'll only do damage 2. Add 6 inches to the range of your first psychic power manifested by your Warlord in each psychic phase. Or roll a dice each time your Warlord suffers a Perils of the Warp, and on a 2-up, your Warlord does not suffer a Perils of the Warp. There's a couple more in there, but they're not that great. Nergal. You can add 1 to your Warlord's wound characteristic. You can roll a dice every time your Warlord loses a wound in the fight phase, and on a 4-up, the unit that inflicted the wound gets a mortal wound after all of its own attacks have been resolved. That one's only in the fight phase. Plague Fly Hive is probably the best one though. Your opponent must subtract 1 from all hit rolls that target your Warlord if the attacking unit is within 7 inches. And it just says subtract 1 from all hit rolls. That will be shooting if they're within 7 inches. That will be close combat if they're in close combat. That's only within 7 inches though. Virulent Touch, add 1 to all wound rolls made by your Warlord unless it's a vehicle. Or you can get your Warlord save characteristics up to a 4-up. Your Warlord has Impenetrable Hide. Or Pestilent Miasma, roll a dice each time an enemy unit that is within 1 inch of your Warlord at the start of your turn, and on a 4-up they suffer a mortal wound. Not very good ones for Nergal there, I don't think. Slaanesh. The Slaanesh ones are all close combat related, except for the first one, which is Celerity of Slaanesh, which is add 3 to your Warlord's movement characteristic. Apart from that, all the rest are to do in the fight phase. So you can reroll failed hit and wound rolls for your Warlord if they target characters and characters only. If your Warlord charges in the charge phase, add D3 to their attacks. Each time your Warlord makes a wound of a 6-up, each time you make a wound roll of a 6+ for your Warlord in the fight phase, the target suffers a mortal wound in addition to any other damage. Savage Hedonist, you can add 1 to your Warlord's attacks characteristics. Stuff like that for Slaanesh. They're all close combat related, except for that first one there, which is movement related. And then we go on to the Hellforged artifacts, the Relics. There's 2 pages of Relics, and there are 4 Relics for each allegiance, just 4 to pick from. So the Khorne one, the wearer of the Armor of Scorn has a 4-up invulnerable save instead of a 5-up invulnerable save, and they can attempt to deny 1 psychic power in each psychic phase. And then there's the Crimson Crown, which is a Khorne model only. Each time you make a wound roll of a 6 for a friendly demon Khorne unit within 6 inches of the bearer of the Crimson Crown, the model that made the attack can immediately make an extra attack against the same target using the same weapon, and these bonus attacks themselves cannot generate further attacks. You're probably going to be picking the Armor of Scorn there, 4-up invulnerable save, and having the ability to deny psychic tests, because Khorne struggles against psychers. And then there's a very special sword and a very special axe, and the very special sword has got a nice stat line and allows you to re-roll failed wound rolls against characters, and the very special axe allows you to re-roll failed wound rolls against Titanic units. And obviously they've got nice plus strength, plus AP, extra damage, just big weapons. Tzeentch, the Endless Grimoire. Basically the Endless, they know an additional psychic power, or they can take the Everstave, and the Everstave model with a Rod of Sorcery or Staff of Change adds 1s to the bearer's psychic test whenever they try to manifest Smite. There is also the Impossible Robe, and the wearer of the Impossible Robe has a 4-up invulnerable save, which then you'll plus 1 to, remember, because of the Tzeentch allegiance thing. So they'll basically have a 3-up invulnerable save, because plus 1 was Tzeentch. And once per game you can re-roll a single saving throw made for the bearer. But if the re-roll results in a 1, the wearer is immediately slain. So you're never going to use that part of it. But having a 3-up invulnerable save on one of your Tzeentch warlords or characters is a good idea. And then there's also a staff, and the Soulbane replaces the bearer's Ritual Dagger. It's for Tzeentch Herald's only. And this dagger, Ritual Dagger, the Soul Blade, ignores invulnerable saves. That's their weapon. They have 1 weapon and 3 other things. You're probably taking the Everstave, right? Adding 1 to your Smite. On to Nergal. I said everyone had 4. Nergal's only got 3. One is the Horn of the Nergal's Rot, and roll a d6 each time the bearer kills an enemy model in a fight phase. So you've got to have this guy kill an enemy model whilst within 7 inches of a Plague Bearer unit. And then on a 4-up, you can add a single Plague Bearer model to one of those units. So highly situational, you're never going to bring it. Entropic Knell. Enemy units must subtract 1 from their leadership characteristics while they're within 7 inches of the bearer of the Entropic Knell. Again, a bit meh. And Corruption. A Nergal model with a Plague Sword, Bale Sword, Bar Sword, or Hellforged Sword takes this sword instead, and it's basically reroll failed wound rolls for this weapon. That's it for Nergal. Nothing amazing. On to Slaanesh. Starting off with the Forbidden Gem, which is very interesting because it's a once per battle thing. You target an enemy character within 12 inches. So technically you could do this to Mortarion. You do this to any enemy character within 12 inches once per battle. Roll 3d6, and if the total exceeds the model leadership characteristic, it cannot act until the end of the phase. Can't move, manifest psychic powers, shoot, charge, fight, etc. Cannot use any abilities on its data sheets that affect other units as well. So aura abilities that heal other models suddenly stop. It's a once per battle. You need to be 12 inches away. You need to beat the leadership on a 3d6, but it's very nice. If you manage to pull that off, yeah, it's a good one. You could technically do it to Guilliman as well, get within 12 inches range of Guilliman, zap him with that one once per battle, and his aura abilities will suddenly stop. The Mark of Excess, add 1 to the bearer's attacks characteristics and add a further 1 each time the bearer slays a character or monster. So +1 attack at the start of the battle, and then off they go. They kill a character or monster, and that's another +1 attack. And it says add a further 1 each time. So technically, if you manage to kill something in the first turn, second turn, third turn, technically you could get an extra attack, extra attack, extra attack. You're not likely to get 5 extra attacks by the end of the game, but it's very fluffy. Then there's 2 weapons. One is the Soul Stealer Sword, which replaces a sword or Hellforged sword. And every time you kill a model, you regain a wound with it, which is nice. And you re-roll all failed wound rolls made for this weapon when targeting Eldari units, which is nice. And then there's Slothful Claws, which is for a Slaanesh Herald only. And each time you make a wound roll of a 4 up for this weapon, that hit is resolved at AP -4 instead of AP -2. It's basically places the Ravager's claws of a Herald. So again, very specific. You're probably not going to use that one. And that is the Hellforged artifacts. The ones that stand out for me are the Tzeentch and the Khorne ones. The Armour of Scorn for Khorne, having a 4-up invulnerable save and being able to deny psychic powers. That's a good one. And the Impossible Rove and the Everstave on Tzeentch models, smiting away on a +1 or having a 3-up invulnerable save. It says it gives you a 4-up invulnerable save, but that will stack with the Tzeentch discipline. So having a 3-up invulnerable save on a Tzeentch model seems to be the standout ones for me there. Then we go on to psychic powers. Start off with Nergal, because I've got a soft spot for Nergal. Stream of Corruption, Virulent Blessing, and Fleshy Abundance are here from the index. They remain unchanged, and then there's 3 new psychic powers. And one of them is Miasma of Pestilence, ripped straight out of the Death Guard book. So the Death Guard Miasma of Pestilence is if you pick a Death Guard unit within 18 inches, it's -1 to hit them. Warp charge value of 6, but Miasma of Pestilence in the Chaos book, Chaos Daemons book, is you can pick a Nergal demon unit within 18 inches, warp charge value of 6, and it's -1 to hit them. That will be in close combat or shooting. Miasma of Pestilence is a good psychic power, having used it with my Death Guard. Remember, if you chuck it out on a unit of Plague Bearers that have a unit of 20 or more models, so big hordes of Plague Bearers, so you've got a horde of 30 Plague Bearers, they're already -1 to hit them because of their Cloud of Flies rule. You chuck out Miasma of Pestilence on them, that'd be -2 to hit a unit of Plague Bearers. It's very interesting. Then we've got Nergal's Rot, and it's a chance to do mortal wounds on something that's 7 inches away. But the best one for Nergal is the Shriveling Pox. It has a warp charge value of 6, and it's got a range of 18-inch range. But it'll subtract 1 from the target's toughness characteristic. So you could throw this out on an Imperial Knight and drop their toughness down from 8 to 7. It targets a unit. You could chuck it out on a unit of, I don't know, Imperial Guardsmen, and there's 20 of them blobbed up together, and suddenly their toughness is 2. You can chuck it out on any Eldari or Drukhari unit, drop their toughness down from 1 to 2, and suddenly your strength 4 weapons are wounding them on 2. It's 18-inch range. Reducing enemy toughness down by 1. It's good. Right, back to Tzeentch. We've got Boon of Change, Bot of Change, Treason of Tzeentch, which are unchanged from the index. And then we've also got Gaze of Fate. It has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, you can re-roll a single dice later during your turn. That's it. So you spend those command points for a dice re-roll. oh no, I rolled a 1 to hit, I really needed to hit, let's roll a dice again, and you spend a command point. Instead of spending that command point, just manifest Gaze of Fate, and on a 6-up, it'll give you that command point reroll. You can reroll a single dice later your turn. I can see Tzeentch players pulling off that psychic power. The very first psychic power that they do in any single turn is going to be Gaze of Fate, to give them that auto reroll there. How many times as well in the shooting phase have you rolled to hit something and missed, and then spent a command point to reroll a hit, and suddenly, oh great, I've done a hit, and now I need to do d6 mortal wounds, and then you roll a 1. And so you've only done 1 wound, after you've actually hit the target, and you've already spent your reroll, so you can't reroll it to get the d6 up to a 6 from a 1 or something. Well, with Gaze of Fate, you'd still have that command point in your back pocket. I like it. Flickering Flames has a warp charge value of 5. If manifested, pick a friendly Tzeentch demon unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. Until your next psychic phase, add 1 to any wound rolls made for that unit's shooting weapons. And Infernal Gateway has a warp charge value of 8, so this is a tough one to pull off. If manifested, identify the nearest enemy model that is within 12 inches of the Psyker and visible to it. That model's unit and every other unit, friend and foe, within 3 inches of that model suffer d3 mortal wounds. The number of mortal wounds inflicted is d6. Instead, if the power is manifested with a psychic test of 12 up. So this is a super smite. You need a warp charge value of 8 to do it, but you'll do d3 mortal wounds on that enemy unit, and it's 12-inch range, and d3 mortal wounds to every friend or foe unit within 3 inches of that one. A blast of flames. I quite like it. It is very situational. It will hit the closest enemy model that is within 12 inches as well. So positioning will be key here. Right, Slaanesh has Cacophonic, quite that one. Symphony of Pain and Hysterical Frenzy. They're in here as well. You've also got Delightful Agonies, which is a warp charge value of 5. Select a single friendly Slaanesh demon unit within 18 inches of the Psyker, and until the start of your next psychic phase, roll a d6 each time a model in that unit loses a wound, and on a 6-up, that model does not lose a wound. So a 6-up, Feel No Pain. Paveni, I'm probably saying it wrong, of Slaanesh, has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select an enemy unit that is within 18 inches of the Psyker and visible to them. Roll a d6 for each model in the unit, and that unit suffers a mortal wound for each roll of a 6. So a good horde killer, good against orcs or nids or something like that. And then a Phantasmagoria has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, enemy units must subtract 1 from their leadership characteristics until the start of your next psychic phase while they're within 12 inches of the Psyker. Doesn't sound great, but it is a 12-inch range, so that's a 24-inch range bubble there. So, and it's only a warp charge value of 6. So it does reach out and touch a long way. So Slaanesh, yeah, has probably got the worst of the psychic powers there. The best one that I can see is Infernal Gateway for Tzeentch, which is the Super Smite, and also Shriveling Pox and Miasma of Pestilence for Nergal. That Shriveling Pox -1 to toughness, or Miasma of Pestilence -1 to hit Nergal units is going to be used a lot. But that's not it for the psychic phase. No, there's a Dark Hereticus discipline table in here which has 3 psychic powers which come into effect if you take Be'lakor. And Be'lakor only, because Be'lakor, of course, is not affiliated to any of the gods. And Be'lakor can pick Infernal Gaze, Death Hex, and Gifts of Chaos. No warp time in here, but Death Hex is certainly a powerful one. And yeah, those are the 3 psychic powers that Be'lakor can pick. Be'lakor knows Smite and 2 psychic powers. He can manifest 2 a turn, so he's going to be smiting, and he's going to be doing Death Hex, which is the select an enemy unit that's within 12 inches of Be'lakor and is visible to him, and until the start of your next psychic phase, that unit cannot take invulnerable saves. That's the one that he's going to be popping off, along with his Smite. Right, let's go into some of the points changes. It's tricky looking through the points values in this book for a couple of reasons, because a number of the units in the Chaos Daemons book have changed names, so there's no longer any Herald'S in here. Instead, there's types of Herald'S. We'll get onto that in a second, but there's different types. So normally I'll run through the points and just compare it between the index, but it wasn't as simple and straightforward as that. And the other thing that surprised me when I run through the points in here is I'm just used to going through it and seeing points go down, down, down everywhere, but there's quite a few that have gone up. But then again, the Chaos Demons books has taken an overhaul, so the points don't necessarily reflect what these units now do on the battle grid. Be'lakor, for example, has gone up by 40 points, and Great Unclean Ones have gone up between 70 and 80 points, depending on which Great Unclean One that you take. But the Great Unclean One's rules have changed, so yeah, it is what it is. Other units have gone up in points cost as well. The Burning Chariot is up 22. Exalted Flamers are up 20. Yeah, a couple of tweaks up here, there, and everywhere. But there are some that have gone down quite considerably. So Karanak has gone down 46 points. Lord of Change down 20. Kara's Fate Weaver down 30. Skull Cannon down 47. Scar Brown down 20. As for the smaller units, well, Beasts of Nergal down 4, Bloodletters down 2, Chaos Furies and Demonettes down 2, Plague Bearers down 1, so most of the troops have all gone down. Pink Horrors have gone down from 10 points to 7 points, but Brimstones have gone up from 2 to 3, Blue Horrors stay the same, so more expensive just to spam Brimstone Horrors. Also, they only ever do 1 smite, 1 damage when they smite, not D3 mortal wounds. Yeah, so that's it for the horrors. So a few changes here and there in the points section. I'd say about 50%, well, about 40% of the models have had points changes. Most of them down, some of them up. But with the changes in the units, you're going to have a good look in the Chaos book itself, in the units itself, to see how that affects gameplay going forward. But it is interesting to see some points increases. So while we're talking about, let's jump into the units themselves and have a look at some of these changes to the core datasheets. So I'm going to run through the datasheets. Where I don't mention a unit type, it's because I haven't seen a change. I'll talk about all the changes in the unit types that I see. So if that datasheet isn't mentioned, then it hasn't changed, or I missed something. So Scarbrand, Bloodthirsters of Insensate Rage, and the Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster, and the Bloodthirster of Unvet Fury have all got a new rule called Deathbringer. The remainder of their stuff is still the same: Demonic, Unstoppable Ferocity, Demonic Ritual, they're Greater Demons, all that sort of shenanigans. They're still Strength 7, Toughness 7, 16 wounds. They're still absolute beasts on the tabletop. But they've now got Deathbringer. For each unmodified hit roll of a 6 made for this model's attacks in the fight phase, it scores 2 hits instead of 1. So the opportunity for these guys to lay down more damage. They're hitting on 2s in most cases. They have 6 attacks in most cases. So one of them is going to be a 6, right? So typically they're going to be getting 7 attacks and an extra attack going forward. Then we go on to the Herald's, which are not Heralds anymore. Beforehand, you'd have a Herald of Khorne, but now there is one called a Bloodmaster, which is a Herald with a sword, and then a Skullmaster, which is a single model with a blade of blood and rides on top a Juggernaut of Khorne. So the Skullmaster is the Herald on a Juggernaut, and the Bloodmaster is the Herald. And then you have a Blood Throne, which is the Herald of Khorne on a Blood Throne. Now these 3 Heralds do what they did beforehand. The stats seem to be the same. But you just got to be mindful that some of the names for some of the units have changed. So when you're mixing and matching from the index to this book, that's one of the first things that stands out to me. Then in the HQ section, it goes from red to blue and shows you Kara's Fate Weaver and the Lord of Change, which appear to be unchanged from the index. Kara's Fate Weaver, however, he can still manifest 3 psychic powers in each friendly psychic phase and deny 3 psychic powers. He still gives you D3 extra command points, but he knows all of the psychic powers from the Tzeentch discipline, and remember there's 6 of them now. So Kara's Fate Weaver has got the whole chocolate box to pick from. Then we have the Changeling, a favourite for lots and lots of people, because previously the Changeling with the Locus of Transmogrification would mean that friendly Tzeentch demon units within 9 inches of this model when are surrounded by a twisting aura of change, and your opponent must subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks on units within 9 inches of the Changeling. That's changed. Roll a d6 each time a friendly Tzeentch demon model within 9 inches of the changeling loses a wound now. And on a 6-up, that model is surrounded by a twisted aura of change and does not lose the wound. So no longer -1 to hit units within 9 inches of the changeling. Instead, you get a 6-up, feel no pain within 9 inches of the changeling. The blue scribes, they still have the sorceress's siphon thing. So if an enemy psyker fails their psychic test within 12 inches of the blue scribes, they cannot attempt to manifest it again that battle. Previously, the blue scribes could then use that psychic power in the next psychic phase, but that rule has been deleted. Because of that, the sorceress barrage rule has changed a little bit. So I'll read it so you know what it is now. Because previously they would siphon that power, then they would use a Tzeentch power, and they would use the siphoned power. But now they automatically manifest one randomly selected psychic power from the Tzeentch discipline in your psychic phase. Remember, there's 6 of them. And in addition, if the blue scribe siphoned any psychic powers in the last enemy psychic phase, they will also automatically manifest the smite psychic power. No psychic test is taken. They cannot be denied. Where the result of the psychic test matters, the psychic power is treated as having been manifested with the minimum roll possible without rolling a double. So that's what their sorceress barrage does now. And then we have the heralds. The names have changed. You have a change caster, which is a herald, then a fate skimmer, which is a herald on a burning chariot drawn by screamers, and a flux master, which is the herald borne aloft on a disc of Tzeentch. Again, the datasheets are the same, but the names have changed to protect the innocent. Then we're on to the first of the new models. We have Rata Goose, who is the named Great Unclean One. He's a character, and he's got 18 wounds, so he can be targeted. The Great Unclean One as well, by the way, has gone from 12 wounds to 18 wounds as well. So that's why their power level, their points cost has gone up so much, from 12 to 18 wounds, which is quite a lot. Toughness still 7. Previously, their ballistic skill went down or up, depending on how wounded they are. But now, Rata Goose and the Great Unclean Ones, their weapon skill and ballistic skill always stays on a 2-up and a 3-up. And it's their strength that reduces, and their attacks characteristics that reduces. Their attacks characteristics always reduces, but their strength reduces as they get injured. So 10 to 18 wounds, their strength 7, 5 to 9, strength 6, 1 to 4, strength 5, as they get wounded. But a lot more wounds on these guys. So let's take a look at Rata Goose. This guy is 330 points. He can manifest 2 psychic powers and deny 2 psychic powers. Demonic resilience, all that sort of shenanigans. He has streams of brackish filth, which is an assault 2d6 and automatically hits the target. This is strength user, so it'll be strength 7, 6 or 5, depending on how injured he is. And it's assault 2d6, so a chance between 2 or 12 hits. It's a 7-inch range flamer, essentially, but it's -3 AP at 1 damage each. He also has his Fanged Maw, and each time he fights, he can make an additional d6 attacks with this weapon. So he starts off with 5 attacks, and he can have an additional d6 attacks with this weapon if he wants to, which is strength user, -1 AP, or he can smack stuff with his Gnarl Rod, which will get its +1 strength, -2 AP, but 3 damage each. And you can reroll all failed wounds with this weapon. So when Rata Goose is at full health, he's hitting at strength 8 with this thing, at -2 AP, at a flat 3 damage, and he's re-rolling all failed wounds with this weapon with 5 attacks. So he's a bit of a beast in close combat. You wouldn't want him up that close and personal to you. He's got Deluge of Nergal. Every time he manifests a psychic power with a psychic test of 7 or more, the closest enemy unit suffers a mortal wound after the effects of the psychic power have been resolved. So this is like pestilent fallout from the Malignant Playcasters in the Death Guard book. He has Crushing Bulk. Roll a d6 at the end of your charge phase if Rata Goose made a successful charge, and on a 4-up, you can select an enemy unit within an inch of him, and they suffer a mortal wound. And he's a greater demon-friendly Nergal units within 6 inches of him can use his morale, his leadership of 10 rather than their own. That is standard for all greater demon units. The Great Unclean One as well also has Crushing Bulk, so a chance to do a mortal wound on a 4-up when they go charging in there. They've also got Putrid Offering. So what it does is he can give a mortal wound. You can take a mortal wound on your 18 wound models, And if you do that before you, which you can save, by the way. So if it does so, the Great Unclean One immediately suffers a mortal wound, which you may attempt to ignore, being disgustingly resilient, before you take a psychic test. But when you do so, add 1 to the result. So if you really want to get a psychic power off, lose a mortal wound, roll disgustingly resilient for it. Maybe you'll pass, maybe you don't, but +1 to your psychic test. Putrid Offering. He's also got Reverberating Summons. If a Great Unclean One with a Doomsday Bell attempts to summon a unit of Nergal demons to the battlefield, you can roll 4 dice instead of 3. In addition, at the start of each of your turns, you may roll d6 for each Nergal demon unit within 7 inches of a Great Unclean One with a Doomsday Bell. And on a 4-up, a slain model is returned to that unit. So every turn, roll a d6, and on a 4-up, you can put models back. That's the Reverberating Summons, so long as you bring them along with a bell. And the bell is a melee weapon at +1 strength, -1 AP, D3 damage a pop. Instead of the bell, you could give him a nasty sword, which is +1 strength, and it's -3 AP. Rerolling failed wound rolls with this weapon, and it does d6 damage a time. However, the Great Unclean One doesn't have Streams of Brackish Filth, a 7-inch flamer 2d6 attack that Rata Goose has. Instead, they have a Plague Flail, which is an Assault 3 7-inch weapon. It is -3 AP, it is 2 damage a pop, and this unit can be fired within 1 inches of an enemy unit, so it works like a pistol. And in addition, excess damage from this weapon is not lost. Instead, keep allocating damage to another model. So a 3-shot gun, a 3-shot 7-inch range pistol, which you can use in close combat, which will roll over. And this guy is good at psychic powers, summoning demons, putting units back in demon units, giving up mortal wounds for extra psychic stuff. Or you can just bring along Rata Goose himself, who can deny more, and he can deny 1 more. And he's got that Streams of Brackish Filth stuff. I don't know which one is better. They're both tough as nails at 18 wounds and toughness 7. And they're both very, very nice models. They look stunning. Good job, GW. Then immediately after that entry, Epidemis is still in here, counting his tally of pestilence, which is unchanged from the Nergal Demon book, from the Chaos Index. And Epidemis is very interesting because remember, when you kill Nergal units, when you kill units, when a friend or foe is destroyed by a Nergal demon, you add 1 to the tally, and you can have reroll fail hit rolls of 1, increase the move characteristics by 1, increase strength, increase toughness, increase attacks. So remember, as soon as the tally gets up to 5, the toughness of the Great Unclean One and Rata Goose is going to go from toughness 7 to toughness 8. Also, by that time, he's going to have an increased strength and move and everything. These guys are beasts. Yeah, like them. Particularly stacked up there with Epidemis. Then we have the Herald'S. There's Pox Bringer's Sloppity Bile Piper and Spoil Pox Scrivener. The Pox Bringer is the old Herald that we knew, which adds 1 to the strength characteristic of Nergal demons within 6 inches. Sloppity Bile Piper, though, he's a new unit. He's got a new model. And whenever a Nergal demon takes a morale test within 6 inches of him, roll 2d6 instead of 1 and discard the highest. And he's also got Jolly Gut Pipes, which is add 1 to the attacks characteristics of Nerglings and Great Unclean Ones that are within 6 inches of him. In addition, Nerglings and Great Unclean Ones can declare a charge, even if they advanced in the movement phase, if they're within 6 inches of a Sloppity Bile Piper. So this guy's a Herald that doesn't have psychic powers. You're going to bring him if you're bringing the Great Unclean One, because that gets their attacks when they're uninjured from 5 to 6, and their reroll and their charging, even if they advanced. So he's a great combination to bring with a Great Unclean One. You're going to see Epidemis on the battlefield and the Sloppity Bile Piper, and then the Great Unclean One moving up and charging, even when they advanced. And the Spoil Pox Scrivener is a stern taskmaster, and he adds 2 to the movement characteristics of all Plague Bearer infantry units within 6 inches of him. This affects Plague Bearer infantry only. So instead of giving them +1 strength to a Nergal demon unit, which you would do with a normal Herald, this one you've got your movement up to 2, which is good because most Nergal demons have got a movement characteristic of 5. Oh, Plague Bearers, sorry, have a movement characteristics of 5. So having your Plague Bearers with a movement characteristics of 7 is good. And he also adds 1 to all hit rolls for Plague Bearer units within 6 inches of him. Keep counting, meet your quota. In addition, when you make a hit roll of 7+ for a Plague Bearer unit within 6 inches of one of the more friendly models with this ability, you can then make additional attacks. So he's got essentially Death to the False Emperor rule. He only affects the Spoiled Pox Scrivener, only affects Plague Bearer units. They're going to be going movement 7. And when they attack, it's +1 to their attacks. And when they get 7 up, they get additional attacks. Those wounds, they explode. Those dice explode. So Spoiled Pox Scriveners are there to boost your Plague Bearers. He will be with 2 units of 20 Plague Bearers or 2 units of 30 Plague Bearers, moving quickly up the battlefield with extra attacks. Your Sloppity Bile Piper, he's the guy that will be buffing up your Great Unclean Ones. There's also the Horticulus Slimux in here. Horticulus Slimux, this is a guy on a snail. I should put the picture of the snail guy up because I think he was in Age of Sigmar beforehand. I think this is a model that comes from the Sigmar range. I think I've seen him before. I'm not sure because I don't do Sigmar. But he is now in here. He's a character with 7 wounds, so you can't target this boy. And he rides around on his snail. He's got Loping Shears, which is strength +1, -3 AP, D3 damage, and you can re-roll fail wound rolls. And the guy himself has 4 attacks at strength 5. So this is a strength 6 attack at -3 AP at D3 damage. Mulch, the thing that he's riding around on after you attack, he can make an additional attack, 1 additional attack. He's strength 7, -4 AP at a flat 3 damage. Bear in mind that this guy's got a weapon skill of 2 and a ballistic skill of 2. Not that he's ever going to use it, but he's hitting on 2s with his 4 attacks, and Mulch hitting on 2s with his strength 7, -4 AP, 3 damage attack. He's only got movement characteristics of 5 because I guess snails are very slow. And he's a beast handler. You can re-roll failed charge rolls for friendly beasts of Nergal, which is in 6 inches of him. And you can add 1 to all hit rolls for friendly beasts of Nergal units that are within 12 inches of him. And whenever an enemy unit falls back, they have a chance of taking mortal wounds. And then in death there is life. At the start of your turn, if any model's friend or foe were slain during the last turn, 1 demon Nergal within 7 inches of him gains a lost wound. That's 7 inches. So you can chuck this back on a Great Unclean One. You can chuck this back on your Sloppity Bile Piper. And it's automatic. You don't have to roll for it. In death, there is life. So long as someone died within 7 inches of him, the Horticulus Slimux regains 1 lost wound. This character, sorry, I read that wrong. This guy regains 1 lost wound. So if he's taken any damage, he can heal himself so long as stuff around him is dying. Now, the interesting thing that this guy does is he seeds the Garden of Nergal. At the end of your movement phase, you can add 1 new Feculent Gnarlmaw to your army, set it up within 3 inches of the Horticulus Slimux and more than 1 inch away from any other models. I should put up a Feculent Gnarlmaw, should be on the screen now. So at the end of every movement phase, as long as this guy is alive, he sticks 1 of these down 3 inches away from him. Feculent Gnarlmaws are 50 points. They're a fortification and they come in units of 1 to 3. So at the start of your game, you could bring 3 of these or 9 of these, 50 points a pop. They do not have a stat line. They are treated as a terrain feature and cannot move and cannot be targeted or affected by any abilities in any way. So for example, you could set up 3 of these or 6 of these or 9 of these in your deployment zone at the start of the game. Why would you want to bring these along? Well, they have the Shroud of Flies rule. So any demon units except vehicles and monsters, just demon units, no vehicles, no monsters that are within 7 inches of them, receive the benefit of cover, but add 2 to their saving throws instead of adding 1. Now, most demons don't have a save. So, for example, most demons have a save of a 6 up. but this suddenly gives you +2 cover, so long as you're within 7 inches of these. So I can see sticking a couple of these feculent Narmors in your backfield, so demon units that are sitting back there to guard an objective suddenly get a +2 to their cover. Also, any Nergal demon units, including vehicles or monsters, that are within 7 inches of a feculent Narmor at the start of their turn can shoot and or charge this turn, even if they advanced or fell back. And you can re-roll any of the dice used in the summoning roll when a Chaos character is within 7 inches of a feculent Narmor. Re-roll any of the summoning dice. So +2 cover. You can shoot and charge even if you fall back or advance, so long as you're within 7 inches of these. And also, at the start of your turn, roll a d6 for every unit that's within 3 inches of a feculent Narmor, and on a 4-up, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound, but on a 6-up, it suffers d3 mortal wounds. Nergal units are unaffected by this ability. I'm assuming right off the bat you have to pay for these feculent Narmors, so if the Horticolous Slimux is sticking them down on the battlefield at 50 points a pop, then just like bringing demons in from reserve, I'm assuming that this guy, say you've got a 2,000 point army, you've decided to bring 4 of these things along, you stick 1 down in a deployment zone, and you're going to use the snail guy to bring in 3 of these as the game goes on at the end of each of your movement phases. I'm assuming you have to pay the points for them, because you normally have to pay the points for bringing in demons from reserve. The fact that they cannot be targeted or affected in any way, these trees, seems a very resilient, very tough, very hard to beat ability. If enemy units get within 3 inches of them, they're going to be taking wounds, and it does affect your army rather spectacularly. Being able to shoot and charge, or even if you advanced or fell back, is a nice, potent ability. I also like the narrative of it, though. You can see the disease spread across the table as the game goes on, as these trees start popping up. One more thing to note, though, only one of this model may be included in your army. That's the Horticolous Slimux. Only one of the snail dudes per army. You can't bring 3 of these guys, start chucking lots of trees down. Now the Slaanesh HQs are the Keeper of Secrets, Mark of Slaanesh, and Herald of Slaanesh. This is the only herald that hasn't been split into 3 different heralds. It's just a Herald of Slaanesh. And the Herald of Slaanesh on a steed has dropped from this book. You're going to have to take it from the index. The Keeper of Secrets has now got a new rule, though, Mesmerizing Aura. Your opponent must subtract 1 from hit rolls in the fight phase that target him. And then after that, we have Be'lakor and a Demon Prince of Nergal. These are not color-coded, so then you need to apply... Be'lakor, of course, doesn't come with any... He can't join to any of the allegiances. So if you take Be'lakor in your army, you will not have access to any of the locuses that I talked about, the loci that I talked about earlier. But the Demon Prince of Chaos, you give him a demonic reward. You make him Khorne, Tzeentch, Nergal, or Slaanesh, one of those ones. Demon Prince's wounds have gone down from 10 to 8. I think that happened in the FAQ anyway, so he's a character that cannot be targeted. And then we're on to the troops, and you have Bloodletters, Horrors, Plague Bearers, Nerglins, Demonettes, Demonettes, and that's it for your troops. I don't think any of the troops have changed except for the Horrors, which I discussed earlier. Then Elites, Bloodcrushers are unchanged. Flamers, the range of their Flickering Flame has gone from 8 inches to 12 inches. The Exalted Flamer used to have a heavy D3 blue fire at 8-inch range, but now it's just a heavy 3 at 18-inch range. So that's a bit more reliable. And his 8-inch range pistol D6 has gone up to a 12-inch range pistol D6. So the Flamers have had a bit of a buff. The new Beasts of Nergal are in the Elite selection as well. They have new models, extra D6 attacks whenever they attack, and their rules in here are exactly the same as they were in the Death Guard Codex, so that they can perform heroic interventions even though they're not characters. And yeah, they have a strength user AP 0 damage 2 attack, which you can reroll for wound rolls for this weapon. I mean, they are what they are. You can have a big squad of up to 9 of these Beasts of Nergal, but they've got some new models. I haven't studied the book deeply enough to see how you could make them truly sing, because that D6 attacks is a bit too random for me. I mean, D6 attacks at strength 4 with AP 0, they seem like horde killers, unless there's some combinations in this book that I haven't been turned on to yet. Even though they're lovely new models, I can't see a lot of people bringing them. We have Fleshhounds, we have Screamers, we have Blade Drones, Seekers, Hellflares, Furies, the Skull Cannon. Skull Cannon's taken a bit of a buff. It was a 36-inch range heavy D3, but now it's a 48-inch range heavy D6. So a lot more shots. It's still strength 8 at D3 damage, but instead of -1 AP, it does -2 AP. And you don't gain any bonus for being in cover when you get hit by it. So the Skull Cannon's gone up a bit. Increased range, heavy D6. It's nice. It's basically firing out D6 mini missile launchers a turn. And the other chariot, the Burning Chariot of Tzeentch. Again, the Exalted Flamer stats are here. So beforehand, it was a heavy D3 at 18-inch range, but now it's just a heavy 3 at 18-inch range. And as a Burning Chariot with an Exalted Flamer on the back can go 14 inches, this thing has got a bit more, it's got meaner. It's heavy 3 shots instead of D3 shots. It's going to be putting down some more damage. And the pistol going from 8-inch range to 12-inch range as well. The chariots have taken a bit of a buff. Well, I say the chariots have had a buff. The Seeker Chariot and Exalted Seeker Chariot of Slaanesh, not so much. No real changes there. Soul Grinder, last thing in the book. Phlegm Bombardment used to be heavy D3, has gone up to heavy D6. Apart from that, no change. So that's it for my review. That's it for the changes. That's what the Chaos Demon book looks like. I think it's very solid. I like the layout in it. I like the way that it's easier to read, much easier to read than the Chaos Index. Some of the points changes seem a bit random to me. There's definitely a lot of Nergal love in here. I can see great unclean ones with Epidemis hitting the battle grid in the near future. The nerfs to the Changeling and Brimstone Horrors were probably needed in the game, though I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who don't like the fact that their Brimstone suddenly now have a 6-up invulnerable save and a 6-up feel no pain when they're within 9 inches of the Changeling, but that is the way it is. But overall, a good book with lots of different psychic powers, a number of different combinations, some interesting relics in there, some very interesting psychic powers in there. It is a solid book, and its demon players are going to find a lot in here. It's a good toolbox. What is the best demon list? I have no idea. I think it's probably going to be a combination of Tzeentch and Nergal, having a Tzeentch Battleforged detachment and a Nergal Battleforged detachment, and bringing them along both together. Your Nergal being your resilience, your Tzeentchy ones trying to shove out as many mortal wounds as possible with their psychic shenanigans. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting me. If you want to support me, check out Witness SEO on Patreon. Thank you to Games Workshop for sending me this book in advance so I can review it and share my insight with the community out there. Thanks everyone for listening. Happy wargaming.